Here we go. Indiana Hoosiers Live 22. Brad, we're back. Another week. And we didn't get to talk Indiana football last week because we were sprung with the announcement of Darian DeVries being the head coach of Indiana basketball. That sprung a 2.5-hour Indiana basketball conversation. You guys can check that out on the Indiana or the Voice of College Football Indiana YouTube channel under the live tab. The whole conversation will be there. Everything else was cut up into clips. But yeah, Brad and I originally started Sigs Inside Indiana Football Podcast. We love talking Indiana football, and that's what we're going to do today. And so, Brad, no news is good news when it comes to spring football, especially when there's not practice going on. So there really isn't a ton going on with Indiana football. Where is your head at in terms of how they look this spring?
I think it's exactly what you said. I think no news is good news for when you're a playoff contender, which is where Indiana's at as a program. I would say just from here on out, like once you make one, you're just a playoff contender until proven otherwise. I mean, it's expanded to 12, so yeah, go figure. Yeah, I think they look cool. All we really got is the highlight videos. Like obviously we're not at camp, so it's really all speculation. So I mean, we could talk about the rooms and stuff like that. Like who do we want to break out? But obviously we're really not going to see it until they play the spring game on Big Ten Network. So we're really not going to see who's getting the snaps, who's not. I think it's cool seeing the clips though. Social media team's doing a great job. Saw Charlie Becker make a play, like some low name guys. They're flashing Hosea Wheeler, who's kind of a big Sigs Inside guy. If you guys don't know, like, yeah, we're calling this right. It's Indiana Hoosiers Live, Sigs Inside football segment. Yeah, is that kind of what we're going with from here on out?
Yeah, we're still working on the branding, on the naming.
It's
on
like
the,
it's like a podcast within a podcast.
It's like Inception. Is anybody? No.
Yeah. It's like a podcast. Yeah, it's Inception, basically.
I think kind of going back to no news is good news. And there was a little bit, like last week, we got some pressers. We got Aiden Fisher, Amari Farrell, Elijah Surratt, and Carter Smith all spoke to the media. We'll break those down in a second. But when you look at, say, a team like Georgia, who made headlines for all the wrong reasons last week, and Mark Rogers, the guy who runs the Voice of College Football, the main channel, put out a video about that with arguably the most out-of-pocket intro I've ever seen to a video, but go check that out. He put out a video on that. But when you look at the problems that a team like Georgia's having, or maybe you think about what the portal speculation could be, or kind of what conversations could be like this time around spring, because a lot of times if there's a lot of smoke and a lot of fire, it's usually not good. And so the fact that there's really nothing going on, especially in a week where like the entire university was on spring break last week, there was no practice.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be getting any new news. Now, the good thing for us being the Indiana football show is that because of all the basketball talk last week, we didn't talk about any of the football news from last week. So that's all we have to roll over.
Is that the smoke this week now?
Exactly.
I mean, I guess it's good news. Like, I think we've talked about it before. I forget if it was on this live show or not, but really the only, like, when we broke down kind of the rooms in terms of what we're expecting, like the real only room that where it's like, where it's like, man, I wish I had kind of eyes on it, would be the D linemen. Would be the one group that would be like, okay, I really want to just see kind of who's flashing over there. Besides that, I feel like everything's kind of like probably going to be anticipated, like what's going to be on paper, basically. It feels like all the holes have been filled. Might not be too much action. I think if there's a ton of action in any of those rooms post spring via the portal, I think we'd all be very surprised. And maybe the DBs might have some more momentum just because they keep surprising us with what those guys are doing over there. But I mean, there's really, I'm excited to hear what the smoke is really, and just kind of. Well,
I'm glad. It's kind of interesting to hear you mention the defensive line room, because in my mind, my entire focus this spring is on the one room that is like the tried and true battle. Like there is, whether it's an open competition, closed competition, whatever you want to call it, the cornerback 2 is up for grabs. And there's another spot in the secondary, one or two of those safety spots that are probably up for grabs too.
The only reason why I don't want to interrupt you, but the only reason why I kind of mentioned that was like, they're all going to kind of get tick. So it's like, who's starting, who's not. It changed throughout last year, and it might change throughout the course of next year as well. So go on. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say that leads us into Aiden Fisher's press conference because the first question he was asked, or one of the first few he was asked, was kind of who's standing out in terms of the new
Ooh,
guys, and 3 guys he highlighted were Boykin, Knighton, and Gandy.
Boykin, Knighton, and Gandy. Yeah, so we're previewing it as obviously Pons is going to start at the corner. Boykin's interesting that I brought up because that's a guy we're speculating, even though he's a little undersized, typically like based on what we saw Terry Jones and Amari Farrell play that rover spot. Devon Boykin's a nickel corner. So if he's flashing already, he kind of has an inside track with a Fisher endorsement to kind of get starting reps at the nickel or the corner or whatever you want to call it, which is really cool for him to highlight. And then obviously can't really take much from him mentioning both Knighton and Gandy. That might be a little bit on purpose.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but still, it is not when
Yeah.
you talk about standouts and you go right to the one room where it's like has the stiffest competition. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you want the 2 guys who are competing, probably like have the inside track to that job to be standing out early in camp.
Yeah.
But another thing that he said, and Carter Smith echoed this, and we'll get to Carter Smith's in a second, but he mentioned that the new class, the new guys coming in, had a little bit of an edge to them, that they were pretty cocky, and that it's gotten quote unquote like a little better over spring, but a lot of those guys came in like talking.
Really? Did
Yeah,
you call
which
out
I
which
like.
ones? Like,
No, he
I could
didn't.
see
He said
Merrick just
he
being I'm obviously speculating here, but I could see Merrick just him being so massive coming into it, like him just kind of being a
well,
talker a little bit.
the rooms, the position rooms are like the offense and the defense really aren't interacting inside of practice. The position groups are really the ones interacting. So it's interesting to see. I kind of speculate who he could have been talking about, but he wasn't the only one to say that the new class had a little bit of an edge to him, and that's exciting. You want your guys to come in and think they're the shit, and now like they're gonna find out that he's like it's a little bit different. You get that reality check, and that's a direct quote from Fisher, where like you were the one, you were the guy, and now you're the 4, and you have to embrace that. And it's really like he said, seeing the growth mindset take over and kind of watching that happen throughout the offseason and into spring. That's been really exciting for him. And then obviously they still have a long way to go, but yeah, it's he said it was reality check season for a lot of those guys.
Is he specifically just talking about the freshmen, or is he talking about, or I mean, the O lineman, or is he talking
What?
about?
No, no, this is Aiden Fisher.
Oh, I thought you said Carter Smith for a second there. I
No, I
swear
said
you said.
sorry. No, I said Carter Smith echoed the same sentiment. No, no,
Okay,
that was Fisher.
okay, so it's everyone. It's even okay. So that's cool. You know, you like that. You know, I think that's what Cignetti probably looks for. They seem like that's
Yes.
kind of you. They always say the team takes on the personality of the head coach. What do people call Cignetti? They call him cocky, just a talker. He brought a
Do,
bunch of
do,
talkers. If we're that asshole team that's just talking to all these guys when we're playing, I would love that. I would love to be the team that they all hate us because we're just a little bit chippier than them. I would love for that to be my team because you always hate that team, but like you also wish the back of your mind that that's your team.
Yeah,
Is
I guess what? I want that in my football players. And I'm not saying that Byron Baldwin Jr. is one of these guys coming in talking, but going back to something I wrote for Key Sports Network last summer when Baldwin first committed to Indiana, he said that's a part of his game. Like he likes to talk and he likes to get chippy and he likes to be like in the mess. And those are the types of guys that Indiana's looking to bring in. You need that mean, nasty edge in the football. Football's not a nice game.
yeah.
Like you can be the nicest guy in the world off the field, but that's going to get you hurt on the field. Like you got to play the game with violence, and you need guys who have that edge to them. And so I like the fact that a lot of these guys maybe they need to be like reminded a little bit of what this next level of football looks like. But I want all my guys coming in thinking they can dominate.
If we're gonna catch Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and then I'll throw in Michigan consistently. Uh, we're gonna need guys like that. If we're gonna be part of that, 5, because it's a clear like in the Big Ten hierarchy, it's a clear 4 that are just kind of the big dogs, and then the 5th spot's really up for the grabs right now. And if that could be Indiana, kind of move them a tier up into that group where it's like year in and year out, that's the 5 in the Big Ten you really got to watch out for over like an up and coming USC and things like that. Everyone's talking about USC's big time class. Like, yeah, they're 4 stars from
What year
the
is it,
West
Brad?
Coast. Yeah, I know exactly. Like we have these guys right now. I don't know. My point is, I don't think these just because you have the flashiest class doesn't mean you have the dogs, if that makes sense. And we've said this before, like, obviously you want to bring in as many stars as possible, but in a micro sense, the stars don't matter. So it really comes down to an individual basis. Like, are these guys going to step up?
100%. And that's why having Fisher back is so important. And he was asked about why he came back and talked about his motivation of why he felt like he needed one more year at Indiana. And he really just said that, and it especially felt it after the Notre Dame game, but he just had more to give. Like he felt like there was just a part of him that left something out there and he needed to come back. And it again, it's so important to have this guy in the room because he talked about like how that defense is always growing, that he's sitting in film sessions with Coach Haynes and they're looking at things that their opponents did or different teams did that they liked, that they didn't like, things that they did. And he's really like having a coach on the field. And it can't be understated the importance. So the fact that like, and I'm assuming Kamara probably felt the same way, that like these guys felt what that potential peak of college football could look like. And it got ripped away from them in harsh reality when they played Notre Dame. But they weren't like if you watched the full game and didn't just check out at halftime and listen to ESPN, like they weren't just completely overmatched in that game. Like they found themselves late in that third quarter, and you could start to see like it wasn't disappointment, more so frustration to the fact that like we didn't play our best and we know we can play with those guys, and in a weird way it gives you confidence. So to have that guy coming back and feel like he left something out there after having 108 tackles or whatever he had and absolutely dominating every level of the field, like can't overstate how important that is enough.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo the sentiment where it's definitely being talked about in this group going into spring that, hey, like we got outplayed for 3 quarters against Notre Dame. That fourth quarter, we kind of found ourselves and got comfortable into the game. Make that a 2-hour long game. Who knows what happens? But they definitely have that mindset where it's like we can still hang with these guys. We're brought so much back, which they did. It's very similar to I always allude to that Penix Washington team that won 10 games, had no draft picks that year because everyone came back and they made a run to the national title game. Obviously, it's not the same level because we're losing guys like CJ West, but with the portal, you're able to kind of fill those spots faster. So bringing back 3 All-Americans in this era obviously is somewhat common with NIL money, but it's huge to just have that coming back all at once because a lot of times you'll have a couple All-Americans and one's a senior and they lose eligibility. But the fact that all 3 of our All-Americans came back, didn't really lose a guy besides CJ West on that defense that's going to be for a lock for the NFL draft. It's just a really good sign for what's to come, because I really do believe our 5 best defensive players from last year are all back. If you want to throw Farrell and you could even argue who's the other DB? Yeah. Well, Jameer Johnson was supposed to be it, but yeah. I mean, the top 4 defensive players for Indiana all came back this year. Farrell, Pons, Fisher, and Kamara. And I mean, having that going into spring and built year 2 of the culture, year 2 jump, I mean, it's just extra motivation for these guys. I mean, they were talking about national championship last spring, and we all called them crazy. You don't think they're talking about national championship again going into spring? Like, Aiden Fisher was at media day talking about playing 17 games. He's going to go back to his media day this year, and he's going to talk about playing 17 games. That's what he's going to be talking about the whole time. So,
yeah, I like that you brought up Farrell because we're going to get to him next. But real quick to finish up the Fisher presser, they asked him like who. Obviously, you can't just replace Jalen Walker because he's just such a unique player with the speed and the ferociousness he plays with. But they asked him what's kind of the room looking like, and he highlighted Bones Jones and Roe Hardy and Paul Nelson as well. So kind of nothing out of the ordinary, but he did just say that they're really kind of looking internally as of now. And well, obviously that's not a coach saying it. They have pretty confident in that room and the ability to be able to go out and produce.
Yeah, what's nice about having Farrell around is that he can kind of go in different spots. He can play that rover. If Boykin just needs a breather, then we Then that's when we kind of rotate in Baldwin, and him more up top, and Farrell's kind of roaming around at the rover. Like, you can kind of mix and match with this group, which is kind of really exciting. I think they're really going to mix up what kind of packages they have, and in that DB room, because they do a lot of different things. Using Farrell more as a blitzer, and then using Boykin more as a cover guy. Not saying they won't be doing, all those things, but they could lean one way. When Farrell's at the rover, it's a lot more likely you might, blitz the rover at that point. Like, just little things like that. Obviously, we don't want to have a ton of tells, but just it's exciting to think like what different packages they can do in that room. Mostly because of Amari Farrell and Devon Boykin. Those two guys, they just bring a lot of versatility to the room, and that's kind of good.
Farrell's presser was interesting. It wasn't a super long one, but he kind of spoke about what his role was going to be this year and kind of what he was focusing on getting better at. And he said physicality, and he also said communication. So that kind of tells me that he's going to be doing a lot. He's going to be up around the line of scrimmage. He's going to be back playing deep. Like, they're going to ask him to do a lot, and he's a type of player that could handle it. But he talked about the defense, and it just said they look dynamic. I'm sure they look fast as hell, and a lot of the younger guys are like, they brought a lot of juice into that room. Zachary Smith is a guy we didn't mention 2 weeks ago. That's another young freshman corner who's really good. He was a Pitt commit at one point.
He got called out?
What? No. I'm saying no. I was saying we didn't.
I really liked Zach Smith's tape.
No. I'm saying we didn't mention him when we were talking about specific guys a couple weeks ago. But I just wanted to mention him to get us. Yeah, well, he's just they brought juice into that room. But he also said that he's best friends with Lewis Moore. That he's pumped that Lewis Moore's back in town. So that probably also lets you know that they have a little bit of chemistry and they'll probably play really well together. So something else to look out for. And then he was specifically asked about Byron Baldwin Jr., and he called him a dog that wants to be great. And he's always asking him to stay back after practice for extra work.
Love it. So it sounds like, if I had to guess, it's going to be, it sounds like Baldwin is obviously running with the twos as a freshman in spring, obviously.
Well, I wanted to figure out a way to like break down. We got one spring Twitter, like full cut up of clips from Indiana football's Twitter page. And in that, it was like certain dudes catching footballs and all this stuff. And Baldwin was in a bunch of the clips. Like, he's out there. So I don't know whether there's the first team or the second team or kind of what was going on there. But like, I don't think it's an accident to the people they're choosing to show. Like, Sam West was a guy that you highlighted 2 weeks ago. He was in that video.
Of course he was.
Charlie Becker's a guy we've been talking about for 8 months. Like, he was in the video.
Yeah, he made a very athletic looking play. I still have him as my third string. It's gonna be hard for him to break into that with EJ and Mekhi Jackson there. It's just gonna be difficult for him. But if he can mix in as a fifth guy, they do want to be able to play as many receivers as possible. So if Becker just makes it, if it makes him unbenchable, then all power to him. All power to him. More cooks in the kitchen at receiver is never bad. So
100%. Speaking of receivers, Brad, and speaking of Mekhi Jackson, I promise there's a transition, a smooth one here. Elijah Surratt spoke to the media. He talked about specifically his relationship with Mekhi Jackson. He said, that was my dog. They were both at St. Francis, PA, or is that whichever?
Yeah, they're going D3 hoops now. That was announced today. Funny little tie-in, I think. Is that the same school? There's like a few.
That's what I'm saying. There's a bunch of St.
Francis. I don't know. Ignore that. I don't know if that's real.
Yeah, but
I did know they were teammates at St. Francis way back in their D3 days, and it's cool that they're back on the same team because they're both all conference Sunbelt guys. So it's kind of come full circle, and they get to compete for a title together, which is pretty sweet.
Well, I think they were both D2 All-Americans, and someone will have to stat correct us on that. But he also said that Jackson could play inside and outside. That was a direct quote from Surratt. So I'm not going to be surprised if he starts popping up in
That's what I said.
But he also mentioned on Tyler Morris that
Mekhi Jackson is yak, which is why he can kind of go both outside and inside, because it's really just about him getting yards after the catch. It's not really, just getting him the ball in space and just see what he can do. That he's one of those types of players. So excited to see what he's able to do in the Shanahan offense, which they like to get guys in space. Remember those wide receiver screens they'd run with Key Williams?
Yeah.
That's Mekhi Jackson this year.
That's it. There was a couple other guys Surratt singled out. Said on Tyler Morris, hardworking, smart. He's going to be using the pass and run game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we knew he was smart. We know he's got some jets. He scored a touchdown
I
against.
would guess he's the fastest guy on the team. If I had to just take it, if I had to bet on a guy in a 100-yard dash, I'm taking Tyler Morris.
And then he said Miles Kendrick is flashing and is really fast, and is advanced for his age.
Really? That's okay. So we can maybe even. Who did I have at the 2 at the slot? I had Miles Kendrick.
So it's cool. It's
Wow, go figure.
It's cool to hear. It's nice because you obviously, we talked about it again a couple weeks ago, that you don't get a ton of these spring appearances. Like, we're not getting a lot of SIG pressers. We're not getting a ton of like players coming to the podium. And when they come back to practice, I'm sure we'll get different guys here and there. And as we get closer to the spring game, I'm sure we'll get SIG again at some point, and we'll see Bryant Haynes, we'll see Shanahan. Hopefully we'll get Whitmer. But like, getting these little nuggets from guys of just like, this guy's looking good, or that guy's like putting in some extra work, like, especially about the freshmen, like to hear out of 3 or 4 of these interviews, to hear Byron Baldwin Jr.'s name be mentioned, to hear Miles Kendrick's name be mentioned, like, those are guys that are going to be building blocks of this program for the next 2 or 3 years, and they're already showing signs.
4 years, yeah, I hear you.
Well, I mean, they play 3 years, get drafted. You know what I mean? Like, let's keep this thing rolling.
I mean, I would like to keep
4 years, whatever.
I'd like to keep you guys one more year. I mean, I would like to see what Ohio State did when they were able to keep all their seniors. They were able to win a natty, which is kind of my sense.
100%. That's what NIL's for. Keep all your guys. If you're getting a day 3 grade, come back to school, man. We'll pay you equal, if not better.
I kind of have a spring ball take when it comes to these pressers. See, I'm always going to be nitpicky. I don't really like I was saying, like, it's, we can speculate about who's doing great and whatnot. I think what I want to see is like the culture stuff get in place, and a piece of that, I think, is like who's taking these press conferences in spring. I don't think any new guy should be taking a single press conference. Transfer, freshman, doesn't matter. I don't want Mendoza taking a press conference. Only starters from last year's team. So that is Carter Smith. That's Omar Cooper. That's Surratt. That is Farrell, Pons, Fisher, and Kamara. Those are the only guys I want to hear from in spring, to be honest.
Well, guess what?
Guess what?
So
are they going to have a presser of not one of those guys? Is that what I'm going to hear right now?
No. I was going to say, so far, the pressers, we got Fisher, we got Farrell, we got Surratt, and we got Carter Smith. So there we go. But no, Surratt wasn't done yet. Surratt was asked about Mendoza. He said the guy loves football. He said he spins it, and they're building reps together.
We knew all those things.
I know. I was about to say, it's nice to hear the receiver confirm what we see visually, but the guy throws a beautiful football. So
when he says he spins it, that's just a good sign. That's just
it's a great sign.
That's the second thing he said about him.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot. They asked him young guys who look good. The first guy he said was LeBron Bond.
Yeah. I mean, I hope they all look good.
I know. I'm just saying. I have the man's words written down. I'm telling you what Elijah Surratt sees is that
Bond and Kendrick are going to be great. I think they're going to be Keyshawn and Miles Price reincarnate is what I'm hoping for those guys. So,
and Davion Chandler's not even on campus yet. So, and there's a couple like impact freshmen that I'm not saying are going to play this year, but like high impact guys that haven't made it to campus yet too. So obviously this is with a small sample size, and then they asked everybody.
It's hard to not redshirt when you're not there for spring ball, though. I will say it's really 100%. Hard to not end up on that redshirt list when
it's hard to not redshirt as a freshman anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I'm just saying, I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of. I know we were anticipating like Davion Chandler when we were talking about this class. Like Davion Chandler might be the guy that is probably the biggest contributor of this class, maybe year one, besides like Byron Baldwin, obviously. With him not being on campus, it's just going to be hard for that to happen. Is how I'll wrap things up. But yeah, that'd be awesome if if he is playing though. That probably means he's like special, like three and done type guy. If he's able to get on the field, especially with this room. But yeah.
And it's not the worst thing if he's not able to get on the field.
Yeah,
the room's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
But the media asked kind of all the players what they look to improve on this year, what they felt like they improved on. And Elijah Surratt said he just it was all speed related. He wanted to get faster and he just wanted to play faster, which makes a lot of sense for him because if you look at a lot of the technical stuff he does and the way he runs routes and sets people up, he's got a lot of tools in his toolkit. So it's like the actual physical speed aspect of it, which like if you want to get faster, run, train. So and he's in the right weight room to do it. So I'm not going to tell the guy he can't get faster. Like he's going to work with Derek Owings all winter.
Yeah, and we watched that Notre Dame game, but that was clear. Like both Cooper and Surratt, kind of their flaws was they just weren't like fast enough, which was kind of unfortunate to happen. And to see, Surratt explicitly say that's what he's been working on, and then to see Omar Cooper burn D'Angelo Pons in a clip makes me feel a little bit better about their speed going into next year, which I'm really excited about. So, yeah, looking to see it on the field is what I'll say.
And then he said on the going into spring and where they were this year as compared to last year, he said it's a lot smoother. They're a lot farther along, which obviously makes a lot of sense. Like last year, I actually went to go make this point on Twitter today, and I didn't feel like the number disparity was big enough, so I kind of held back on it. But last year, when Sig took the job, 38 guys out, 30 guys in. This year, 20 guys in, 18 guys out. So it's nice to see that number go down, but like 20 guys is still a huge number. So it's like there's still some turnover going on.
I just want to give John a quick shout out. He fact checked us. Only 4 freshmen didn't redshirt last year. Basically what we were saying, but just want to we got the facts here from John in the comments.
Love it. Shout out John. It's funny. You looked at towards the end of the year when like guys like EJ Williams were hitting the portal and like bouncing out, and you're like, who's gonna play special teams? And then you look and it's like
the
Miles Price is running down as a gunner, and Charlie Becker is the other gunner, and it's like, oh, that's what's.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing: Charlie Becker's playing gunner again this year. I'll tell you that.
He's a dog, man.
I promise
He's
you.
A dog.
We don't have any like. The thing is that like these kids should want to play gunner. Like that's a very valuable position in the NFL. Like, you know what I mean? like Matthew Slater made like $20 million in the NFL on the Patriots by just being a all-pro gunner. He didn't do anything else. And he made the roster every year. He didn't play offense, didn't play defense.
And they let him wear number 18. They gave him a cool number.
Yeah, he was a captain. Like playing gunner is way more valuable than what these kids think. A lot of guys that I've watched over the course of the following, not just obviously when you're watching bad programs, you don't see this as much. But when you're watching, like when I was watching UCLA in their heyday and they're sending tons of guys to the NFL, the guys that really panned out in the NFL were guys that were playing special teams as freshmen. Like one guy I remember, Jayon Brown, he ended up playing for the Titans for like 5 years, something like that. He was one of the best special team guys. Like the guys that play special teams turn out to be like one of your are good football players. Like it's a three facet game. It's not just coach speak. It's like your ability to play all 3 facets. It translates. It's like the theory of multi-sporting. Being able to have those sport skills translate to other sports where you shouldn't necessarily like. It's all the same thing. Your ability to just be a good athlete, be a good. Just be able to kind of have instinct on certain things is going to be very telling in terms of your success at the next level. So these kids should be chomping at the bit to be the starting gunner, being a starter on punt, being a starter on punt return. If they're not, Elijah Surratt or Omar Cooper or one of the 3 All-Americans on defense, that's all they should be striving for, is trying to get on special teams, in my opinion. So
well, guess what? Aiden Fisher and D'Angelo Pons were playing special teams last year.
I know. I think that was more so out of
it was necessity. That's what I'm saying.
But we have like guys like Bones Jones and Bonds. Like even though they might be starters next year, I think they're going to continue playing special teams just because they're good at it, and we can trust them in those spots, especially when we're going on the road to Iowa, when we're going on the road to Penn State, and we're going on the road to Oregon next year. I want Aiden Fisher. If Aiden Fisher can play, if he's has enough honestly. It would be nice to be able to just kind of rest him for a play, but
that's what I'm saying. Like I don't really need him.
If he's down, he's down. Like let him go.
Oh, the kids. I mean, the guys. If you just point Aiden Fisher to the football field, it's just you don't have to say anything. He'll just play. Like you have to tell him to get off. Aiden, it's take a second. Like it's not. You need to save some energy here. Like that's more so what you need to do for Fish. You don't have to worry about that guy wanting to play ball or wanting to be on the field. if he could play offense, I'm sure the kid would play offense. Like it's, I think it's kid just loves football.
Yeah, I mean like I said, these are Signetti guys we're talking about. They're all they at this point in time going into year 2. I imagine they all pass this psycho test, and they're just all lunatics like he is, and that's why I'm so excited about this year 2 jump. Like all the fat is trimmed, it's done. The guys that are in spring right now are all Signetti guys in my eyes. Like there's honestly like only a handful of Tom Allen guys left on this roster. There's only about
There's not much.
There's like I'd guess less than 10. If John can count that for us, that'd be awesome. But that'd be great. But it's at this point, really, like look at the running back room. There's not a single Tom Allen guy in that room at this point. Like, and a lot of the rooms are very similar. So yeah, it's just great to see. And I hope that is their continued mindset.
You know who is technically a Tom Allen guy, Brad?
Give me a name.
And the last one that I listened to speak at the press conference, Carter Smith, starting left tackle for your Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, the only guy who's getting NFL buzz during the Tom Allen era. Carter Smith, go figure, still on the roster. I mean,
that's not necessarily true either, but go ahead.
Whatever. But wait, what am I supposed to say about Carter Smith? What do you say?
No, I was saying I was just telling you he was a Tom Allen guy.
Yeah.
No, but I have Carter Smith stuff I'm about to go into.
All right. Sure.
No, but they asked him, this is kind of where I got the cocky vibe from, because they asked him what the vibe of the team was, and he said the freshmen are quote unquote a little cocky. So that did come from Carter Smith. So maybe you're, again, not to bring back up your Marek speculation, but maybe that it could have been. I'm not saying it wasn't, but yeah.
I could see it being Baylor Wilkin too, just the way
he's not on campus yet. So
it couldn't be him.
I don't think
so. It's either Merrick
unless he is.
Parker.
Actually, we might need John again. I don't know.
John, help me.
But no, he said they asked him what his role on the offensive line would be, and it definitely seems like he's going to take more of a leadership role this year. He talked about echoing the coaching points and kind of being a guy that, because they're going to have 3 new starters on the offensive line this year that knows what's going on. They asked him about Pat Coogan. He said he's a big guy, fun guy, brings the energy. He also noted that he's playing center. So the Pat Coogan guard, I don't know where the Pat Coogan guard. I don't know where that guard started.
Is it Jamie Jordan who was saying this?
No, I don't know who it was. I'm not putting a name on it. Right, I'm just saying it started somewhere, and it wasn't just like I don't know, but the guy's not playing guard. He's playing center. He's a center. He's playing center. He's expecting Carter Smith is expecting no drop-offs on the offensive line based on their play last year. They're looking to uphold a standard. They're not overlooking any details. They asked him about Zen. God, I'm going to butcher the dude's last. Mikowski, who signed with Hoosiers Connect. Hoosiers Connect locks Zen down, so that was dope. Said he's got a great length. He's an Indiana guy. He's fast. He makes good decisions. So you love to hear that from a tackle, a big athletic guy.
Like fast. I like that word.
I like fast a lot. And also, Carter Smith isn't one to throw around the word fast. The last person I remember Carter Smith calling fast was Mikal Kamara.
Yep, I was about to say the same thing. It was Mikal Kamara last spring. He's like, he's just so fast. He said like fast like 5 times. he was like blown away how fast Mikal Kamara was. He's like, oh my god. Okay, this is what good reps in practice look like. Oh my god, it's great. And then that's great to hear that Mikowski, because that's not something you would necessarily describe Trey Wettig as last year. So kind of bringing a new element to that position, which is really nice. Probably, based on that description, maybe a little more pass pro focus, but I'm hearing that he's a really good run blocker. So just can't wait to see how maybe it's an upgrade of the position, which would be awesome. And we also have Benson there, who's been at Indiana, so he's going to be comfortable. It really just comes down to the playbook for him. And then, and Evan Lynch and Smith are back, and it's just about Coogan, Benson, and Mikowski, who I imagine might be all on the same kind of side. Maybe they'll do Bray Lynch on the left side or on the right side and go Benson
to help
on the left.
With continuity a little bit.
Yeah, to maybe spread out the returning guys a little bit, but I don't know if that's going to be as long as they're all there in spring, I feel like they should be good to
Man, he's like a
go.
guy who
They
played at
looked
an
so good
all-conference
last year.
level.
I don't even know.
He
Like the fact there's even a drop of doubt in my mind is asinine right now about this O line. They're gonna take a step up. I don't think I don't know where the word drop off came from. If anything, they're taking a step up. Talent is just better than it was last year. Period.
No, I was saying Carter Smith
Period.
said he's expecting no drop off from
Yeah. It's
but no, but
it's
to
gonna
go
be an
back to Zen
improvement
real
at that
quick,
particular
real
position.
quick and to keep hampering on fast for that type of athlete. Your mind went past pro, but my mind gets like, what can you do in the run game with a tackler that can
And
go out and
pull 'em.
find a linebacker?
Yeah, the athletic, the bendiness, not being able to get, fooled by the quick twitch linebackers. I did a little juke here.
Well,
God, I'm just ready to play some ball, And then yeah, being able to like adjust on the fly and being able to take out those linebackers as Mekhi Jackson's running down the sideline for a touchdown. That's what we're looking for here. And then Surratt's, chugging down the field, getting downfield blocks, and
then the
Cooper.
RPO game, the screen game with an athletic tackle. Yeah, there's a lot of things
Yeah,
you can do there
because
that
we
that
love running screens, and they tend to work with this offense because we really have complicated pass schemes. So it's like really balanced play calling. So we always seem to call those screens at the right time. Credit to Mike Shanahan for that. Because you can be pretty lazy with your screens. Like, oh, first, second down, like second down screen every time. Like they can get really repetitive and predictable. It seemed like last year you really didn't see it coming with them, despite them running it a ton. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. The play calling, that's what gets you so excited is you look at what the team looked like last year, and then they just, and it's not disrespectful to say they pretty much upgraded every room or just have the same people coming back that are going to get better. And it's like, yeah, that's why Indiana fans are so excited because we just watched something work and the pieces just got better.
Yeah.
But the last two things to wrap up the Carter Smith presser, they went back to Coogan real quick, and they're like, what is the similarities and the differences between Coogan and Kadick? And he said the similarities are their energy. They both have great energy, but obviously the differences being, and these weren't Carter Smith's direct words. This is kind of my takeaway: is Mike Kadick is the barstool personality. He wants to be in front of everybody. He's going to do something that's going to command attention and like,
He's
yeah,
gonna
we
keep it
like
light.
exactly. We love Kadick for it. He said, Pat much more reserved to himself versus like Kadick, who wants to be the center of attention. So kind of an interesting little wrinkle to see the differences between those two guys. But it was also interesting for him to note that their energies were similar. So and then you look at the way Coogan was in the pre-games for Notre Dame, and you can imagine how fired up that guy gets.
I want Coogan to take control of this room. Period. I mean, Kadick is gone. It's time for him to take the reins. Center is the leadership position in that it's like the quarterback. It's the quarterback of the O-line. Like your center has to be the vocal guy, and he showed it in the playoffs last year. That's kind of why I wanted him. Like I wanted him before he was in the portal. Like I saw Pat Coogan, I was like, man, that would be awesome if IU had a guy like that. Go figure, they literally get the same guy that I want to be their center. I can't wait to see clips, maybe some pregame stuff of Coogan getting the O-line fired up. And I really do think it sets a different level, which is honestly part of the reason why I think they're going to take a big upswing next year. Not only do I think the talent is at an upgrade, I think mentally they're going to be a lot more confident, a lot more just like ill-intentioned because they know they can really cause some harm. And just really having that O-line swagger is something you really look for. I remember I was watching BMS. They had they were recruiting the golden arm in that episode, and he shows them the dicks and all the, is that what they're called, right? All the O linemen, their names are. It's like they're all named Dick. It's like no, they're not. They're not. I want them to have that type of swagger where it's like, yeah, these are the five. Like they should be the biggest stars on. Not that I want these guys going out and stuff, but they should be the biggest stars on campus. Where it's like, hey, roll out the red carpet for these fellas. That's what I want for my O-line. Best O-line in the country. I just want the best O-line in the country. You get that, all of a sudden you're talking trophies at that point.
To your point also about having a lot more ill intentions this year as compared to last year. A lot of these guys talked about it. Sig has talked about it pretty much every time he's been near a mic, is like going to Ohio State on the road, going to Notre Dame on the road was the first time a lot of these guys have played in any type of environment like that. To have that experience and go in without the deer in the headlights for the first 25 minutes of the game each time, to have those experiences banked for your most experienced and your best players, to where when shit hits the fan, everybody's turning and looking at those guys and they're going to be stone faced, like ready for war. It's a completely different mindset. Even if you took the same, if you just ran back the same team, I think they'd fare better in those environments simply from the fact that a lot of them hadn't been there before.
Yeah, and it because now that we're in this expanded Big Ten, obviously it's going to be something that's every year. You could probably have at least 3 really tough road environments to go through in the Big Ten. And this year they're going to Iowa City, they're going to Eugene, they're going to State College. State College will probably be a whiteout game because Indiana's going to be ranked in the top 20, 10 potentially. So them just being prepared and preparing for that mentally going into spring, knowing that they're going to be playing these big games where they're going to be ranked and they're going knowing that this stuff is going to happen again, I think prepares them tremendously. And I can't wait to see the spring game. I expect a big step up from quality from last year, just based on things. I thought they were playing really awesome in the spring game last year, but I expected a little bit faster, just a little bit.
I think that's fair. And then the final thing they asked Carter Smith was what was his favorite moment from last year. Do you have a prediction?
Hit Carter Smith's favorite moment.
He gave an honorable mention and then gave
yeah. Well, can I make a bet? He's gonna say the Nebraska game, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's what he's gonna talk. That is gonna be his favorite moment of last year.
And the honorable mention?
Oh, the honorable mention, beating Michigan.
You were close. The honorable mention was Nebraska, and he did specifically talk about the media environment going into that game, about how Nebraska hadn't allowed any rushing touchdowns and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But his favorite moment was the Rose Bowl when UCLA fans cleared out and you could hear like the Hoosiers from the Indiana fans in Pasadena. He said that was his favorite moment.
Awesome. I was a part of that.
You were a part of that. I like it. The only other thing that I had besides Indiana football, and I actually do want to get to John's question in the.
I do. I've been eyeing that. I've been eyeing it for a while. We're just trying to get through the smoke, and then we're gonna open up for Q&A. we're gonna open it up a little bit. Yeah,
maybe a quick one, but no, I want to get into basketball after that. But
yeah, for sure.
Brody McWhorter, class of 2026, one of Indiana's top targets in the class, is a quarterback. He said his commitment date. I know he had a bunch of visits scheduled for like June and whatever, but he set his commitment date May 15th, 2025. Indiana's in the top 6. It was Indiana, Wisconsin, Auburn, Colorado.
Tough group to be
Mississippi State.
Yeah, I hope we get him. This would be a big momentum swing for a guy like Chandler Whitmer to be able to get the guy.
Oh, it'd be massive.
The guy that he wants this early too, because I say this every time we talk about recruiting. Like, you go into spring, you gotta get your quarterback early as possible. That the class builds itself around the quarterback. Like, you're less likely to commit to a school that doesn't have a quarterback in that class that you're committing to. Like, that's just straight up how it goes. Like, it's kind of, you want to be in the class with the 5-star quarterback. You just do. That's like kind of you want to be in a good group that you're vibing with, obviously, and that's like the main thing. But like, it'd be very nice to have the hot shot 4-star quarterback there too. And it's like, okay, this is my group. This is what we're gonna win a conference title with us. Like that should 100%. Be the mindset. Yeah.
100%. And I think it's interesting to see the teams that Indiana keeps popping up in these recruiting battles with. Colorado again, and we watched
very
Indiana
similar evaluation, which I don't hate, because Colorado's been trending up.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's another one that they feels like they go after a lot of the same guys, and it
Auburn too.
In the last couple of months, Cignetti has won a lot of these recruiting battles, so it'll be. I'll definitely have that date circled on my calendar. And there's been a lot of good smoke. I know McWhorter I think it was just on campus, or just there for a practice. So And he's been to Indiana a couple times, and that's Chandler Whitmer's area. He was just with the Falcons, and so you'd like to think they have a pretty good shot there.
I got nothing. I got nothing.
But to John's question, who do we
Too much
think is going to
going on.
start? Who do we think is going to start in the defensive line?
This is a me question. This is a Goom
This is
question.
a you question.
This is a Goom question. This is what it is. So we've talked about before, the D-line need 8 playable guys. So like the starters, not as important as most groups, but in terms of who I think is going to start, who's getting the ones right now with the D-line, it's Kamara at the stud because they already announced that that's where he's going to be. The other big D end where Kamara was last year, it's hard for me to believe Landino is not getting those reps considering the amount of playing time he was getting. Inside, I like the hot shot of Uzziah Wheeler playing that James Carpenter role. And then in the CJ West role, I like Tyreek Tucker to be there right now. A little PFF darling which is also Dominique Radcliffe, who's kind of competing for that spot and will get a ton of reps regardless of whether he's starting or not. But I see Tyreek Tucker getting the first snap of every game this year. I think he's been with Signetti since James, right? What was the school he was at for? James Madison, right? Something like that. some
It's so long, I already forget.
Some small Virginia school. Like, I don't even, it's like, can't even mention that school anymore at this point. And yeah, so I see it as Landino, Tucker, Wheeler, and Kamara starting. Backing them up, Burris, Ratcliffe, and Dukeway. And then there's a bunch of snaps to be had, which is why I've mentioned that this D-line room is probably the one room where I'm like very more intrigued than the others because
there's also
who's necessarily playing. Like, I don't think that's figured out yet on that line at all.
There are 2 massive X factors too. You have William and Andrew DePape. I'm gonna by the start of the season, I'm gonna have the pronunciations of this roster down. I swear. By next episode, I'm gonna have the pronunciations of these names down.
Do it for me, really.
Both those guys, I got you. I'll write them out for you too. Yeah. Both those guys did one got hurt last year. The other one did I think redshirted, didn't really play much. So to have both those guys, where do they factor into the defensive line as well? And then Ndukwe is a guy who he blocked the punt last year. He was somebody who we were really excited about going into last spring.
Reminds me of Jayon Brown, just special guy making plays on special teams as a youngin. Usually gets time on the field later in their career and are very good at it and turn out to be maybe NFL players a lot of the times. Because if you can just make plays, you're just being a good football player, and that's only a good thing. It's not just some coincidence that Ndukwe is blocking the punt. It's not like they designed it for Ndukwe because they're like, Ndukwe's a dog. He can get it. He can get there in time. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Ndukwe is able to do. Because if he's able to be as a true sophomore, able to kind of be a legit rotational guy on this D-line, that's just huge for the program in general. Because Kamara's leaving. So if we have Ndukwe already there next year, that's just big and proven. That's just nice to have going into the portal next year. This is one less spot to fill.
And then Landino, like Brad said, was so good last year, and his high school statistics were so good. We've been singing Landino's praises for months.
Since our first episode, second episode, potentially.
And then Jose Wheeler, and again, I'll say this every time I bring the kid's name up, but if you haven't yet, go check out Buffton Prime's Jose Wheeler breakdown of how this kid plays and what he was doing against Alabama. This kid has the opportunity to be a really, really destructive piece. And honestly, don't be surprised if he ends up getting some reps at that end spot where we expect Landino to start too. And I think that we might see a package at some point that has Wheeler, Ratcliffe, Tucker, and Kamara all on the field at the same time.
Maybe even Burris and Ratcliffe can mix in with those big that big lineup if they want to do it. It'd be fun. I want to see more edge rush guys kind of step up. It's the thing that we're kind of lacking. It's really just Kamara and Landino. And then Ndukwe, maybe, big question mark, hasn't really. And then we have Turvey. There's always Andrew Turvey, or reliable.
Shout out to Andrew Turvey.
Shout out Andrew Turvey. But really, a lot of unprovenness at the spot. But I mean, Hosea Wheeler wears number 0 at the D tackle spot. I mean,
he's gonna be a dog.
I mean, you have to be a dog if you're gonna wear that number at D line. So I'm just excited to see him, and the tape backs it up too. So yeah, John, a lot to be excited about for this room. It's probably the biggest work in progress, but a lot to be excited about, and definitely something to keep an eye on in the portal post spring to see if they could just add to it, because you really can't have too many D linemen. Like if they could somehow upgrade Landino, that'd be great. If they could somehow upgrade Tucker, if they could somehow even upgrade Wheeler, no one's going to be complaining over here. Is what I'll say. Like the more depth we can have, the more talent, the more all conference capable guys we can have on the D line. Probably the most important position group in the modern like game of football. It can only do good for you. Obviously, besides the quarterback, duh. But D line is just super important. You can really change the game with D linemen. So yeah, that's all I got. I'm winded about D linemen.
I want to.
And then I want to shout out John with this comment. He said, IU, he's been a long time IU fan, 1961. I was, to be honest, John, not born yet. First year, he thought IU was a tough place to play, which makes a ton of sense. I mean, I've heard, obviously, this was the best environment I've ever seen from Indiana, being enrolling in 2017. But I heard the Copper Bowl team, like that era, early 90s, late 80s, really good environment, like the Trent Green era. So the fact that John's over here and he's a listener of our pod, I'm just going to say, I mean, we already called this the golden age of Indiana football, but just hearing stories like this from longtime fans like John is all the more sentiment that, we really are in the golden age of football. And it did, like, I'm going to give Thomas flowers. Kind of started with the 2020 season, walked so Signetti can run type of energy that I get from just how that whole thing went down. Yeah, it's just great to hear. Thanks, John, for listening, by the way. Appreciate it.
Love it. I know you reached out and you wanted to talk about some women's basketball. I wanted to touch on a little bit of the IU women's team.
Just some general like sports news. I feel like as a sports podcast, like Juju Watkins tore her ACL yesterday. I see her as basically the best. She's gonna be like the Cheryl Miller. Like she's probably gonna be better than Cheryl Miller, better than Lisa Leslie. Like she's real. Like think of Caitlin Clark as like Steph Curry. Like Juju Watkins is basically LeBron, 6'2" guard in the women's game that can do anything. I mean, she tore ACL. Just want to wish her a really quick and speedy recovery. If I was her, I would take the full next year off. So, I wouldn't risk it just to play some college basketball. It's kind of bigger than that for her. She could be the face of the. She can change her and Caitlin Clark together in the WNBA. They could change the game. They could actually make it popular. I feel like so. Just tough injury.
Well, we were going back and forth a little yesterday because you were concerned, and I saw somebody else on, and I guess you believe the internet, right? But someone else online was also concerned about the ACL injury in particular. We went back and forth about Paige Beckers and how good she's looked, and potentially of the side effects coming off her injury. And so I do think that, especially if she takes the year off and gives it time to heal, that she's going to be able to come back. And so you can only hope that.
Yeah, obviously we're all hoping for the best, but I mean, it feels like to me as like a basketball fan, it feels like one of the worst injuries I've seen since like Derrick Rose, just in terms of just like overall stardom, impact on the game, like the culture, just like impact on the youth, like, or impact on the game it's too early to even comprehend what it's going to be for her. So just wishing her speedy recovery. It looked really bad is what I'll say. Like it looked worse than the normal kind of ACL. I mean, there was a lot of bend there in some of the angles I was seeing. So I just really hope she takes enough time and doesn't force her way back, because she doesn't need to do it. She's so young. Like don't. I hope she comes back the same too. Like that, if she loses a step, I'll be greatly disappointed, because she's actually a very good basketball player to just watch. And like she can hang with a lot of high level college basketball players, let alone like in the women's game. She's obviously dominating. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I was going to say.
Get well soon, Juju. But I also want.
And this is coming from a UCLA guy too. Like, devastated. I have a
And a
UCLA
Hoosier.
women's
You have a
basketball future, and I'm devastated. Obviously, it's great for my future, but I'm devastated for Juju.
you're
Sucks.
a double rival, and it's big stuff coming from you, Brad.
Yeah, no, it's big of
Very
me.
big of you. But I want to talk about Terry Morin's team real quick, and then I want to
Yes.
talk about the Darian DeVries and what his goal is going to end up being this week. But
Yeah, the women's team season ended.
yeah, it's unfortunate. I got my Yarden Garzon shirt on.
There we go.
Shout out
He's
to
a
the
hell of a player.
ladies. First of all, Terry Morin's team, and it's unfortunate they keep getting matched up with South Carolina in the second round. This is back-to-back years. Like, can we get somebody else? Anybody else? But yeah, her teams play so damn hard, and they're so fun to watch. They put so much effort, and it is just so much about the team over the individual. While it is difficult to win and beat these like higher level teams, it's just like watching them without fear walk into that arena and just play basketball, knowing how outgunned they were is just like, it's
So
inspiring
awesome.
stuff.
It is inspiring, and I want to give a special shout out to Chloe Moore McNeil. Obviously, Cindy
Absolutely.
Parrish is the other senior that's gonna kind of go
And
out with flying colors.
there's been some mixed reports on Carolyn Strickland, that she may have eligibility next year. So look for her to potentially come back. But Sid Parrish and Chloe Moore McNeil were the two like seniors that are out of eligibility. And like, go ahead.
Tough to see him go. I mean, Chloe McNeil. I mean, I started watching basically IU women's basketball as soon as Chloe Moore McNeil's freshman season. So I've seen the whole kind of development of her ever since she stepped on IU's campus. Contributor, great teammate, great shooter, great passer, very great all-around player. Loved the lefties. Loved watching her play at every moment. She's so fundamentally sound, always has been. Her entire career has really turned into a triple-double threat toward the end of her career, which is really cool.
She put up a triple-double.
I don't know if she's going to have any future in the WNBA. I obviously am rooting for her, but I mean, what a tremendous college career she had. And if it doesn't work out, hopefully she can maybe stay involved or do something greater beyond sports. What's the NCAA slogan? Do something do something greater and something other.
She had
like
an
that.
awesome.
Like honestly, just hoping her the best in just life. Like whatever she wants to accomplish, she's so well equipped just by her experiences in Indiana. Just super pumped for her, whatever she wants to do. It doesn't even have to be basketball for her.
Chloe had an awesome Hoosiers Connect interview with Mackenzie Holmes. And she talked about that she's going to explore trying to play at the next level. And like you said, like I'm hoping somebody gives her a shot because she's a really dynamic guard. She affects the game in multiple ways. She's a great passer. She's a gritty defender.
Yeah, she does everything good.
She's an excellent teammate. Like she's someone you want around your program. She also talked about if that doesn't work out, that she was going to try and I forget which like medical field she was talking about. But I think
she's a doctor all day. I could have called.
But
that.
I can't remember if it was like nursing or med. Yeah. You'll have to go watch the interview.
Working in a hospital, she's going to save lives. I couldn't think of a better person for it.
And then just like you listen to the way like people talk about how she cares about her family and her story, and it's just like she's an easy person to root for, and so then you hope if it doesn't work out in the W and she is going to explore life after basketball that maybe she comes back to Indiana in some sort of capacity and works with the team and is on staff with Terry Moore, and so who knows? But then Sid Parrish too, like Sid, she was a part of that Oregon class that was like the best recruiting class in the nation or something like that, like. And for her to transfer in and play at Indiana and to go out the way she did and just like how much pride she played with and how much she enjoyed putting on the jersey, like you felt that watching her play, like that she was exactly where she wanted to be doing what she wanted to do. And so to have those two building blocks leave your program, one, they left it in a better spot than they found it, but two massive holes to fill in a roster.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough offseason for the Lady Hoosiers. Sydney Parrish, don't blame her one bit for not going to Indiana the first time. Like you said, top recruiting class at the time, like very hard to kind of turn down, like kind of like anytime you're a top recruit and you got a Fab Five type opportunity in the game of basketball, you can come in with 4 other really good basketball players in a freshman class. It's kind of hard to turn down. So for her to do that and then to get a little homesick, come back to Indiana after, being there for just 1 year, and then to come back home and just have a hell of a career. But she's a part of that Big Ten title team, correct? So
we'll have to get stat corrected on that one off the top of my head.
I need a chat week. Chat week. Yeah, how we doing, chat? How we doing? Can't believe I thought I'd ever say that, to be honest. Like, that's so weird. But yeah, no, it's big holes to fill. Like, two really good shooters on this team. It's gonna be interesting to see how they replace it. Obviously, it's got Garzone coming back, who's probably the best player on the team. So that's one positive that you can spend from him. Probably the next two best players are leaving. So big shoes to fill. Is someone going to step up, or we're going to use the portal?
Well, the other thing too, and the last thing to close the book on the Sid Paris conversation, the one of the things that she said in her kind of exit interview, like post game presser, was that if you want to play in the NCAA tournament, come to Indiana. So a ringing endorsement of Terry Morton and the program she's built here in the short amount of time Sid was here. So really cool. But the other thing that came out of that press conference was Terry Morin just stated explicitly that they need to get bigger, faster, and stronger. And I can't, obviously we're not talking to people around the program. Like, we're not connected. So any of this is speculation, but when you see the three names who entered the portal today and you think about what Terry Morin said over the weekend, it's hard not to feel like those are directly connected. I'd like to be an optimist and think that Coach Morin is aggressively going into this offseason looking to upgrade the roster in real ways, because I think she's much like we're tired of getting South Carolina as a draw. I think she's tired of being outgunned in those matchups, and she has now the resume to go into these recruiting battles and say, like, it's time for us to take the next step and we believe in you. And so I'm really interested to see what this offseason looks like, because if not, then they lost three really good players that the fan base really loved. And so if you're not going to replace them with hopefully more talented players that kind of help you reach your goal, then that could be troubling. So I'm choosing to be an optimist, choosing to think that, you know, we're in for a really exciting offseason with Coach Morin. And I'm excited to see where it goes, because it's been like the Terry Morin experience is incredible.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. So I think she is a little tired of just exhausting her rosters in terms of potential, like getting that Grace Berger team and Mackenzie Holmes to the Elite Eight. As good as they were, like, that's as good as it is going to get with that roster. Like, that's really, like, yeah, maybe if Grace Berger dropped 30, like, maybe they could have pulled that one off. But
It's you look at
Grace Berger's, she's just one girl, you know, like, there's got to be a full, like, you look at these South Carolina, UCLA, USC teams, UConn even, and then they just LSU, and they just got depth for days, and they got, you know, UCLA they got girls coming off their bench that could probably start at Indiana, and that they were the one seed. They're the overall number one seed this year. I watched both women's teams very closely, and it's just like the size, speed. I totally see where she's coming from. It's just different over there.
And if you think back to
the South Carolinas, at the USCs, and at the LSUs, every time she runs into one of those buzzsaws, they get buzzsawed and they don't really have a shot. I mean, they fight, they really do, but they're just outgunned, like you were saying.
Yeah, it turns out to like you get to the post game and it's like, man, South Carolina is like real tired of seeing this Hoosiers team, right? Because like most teams go in there and just believe they can't win. But even like you look at last year's roster and how like sick that game was, especially down the stretch, and how well the entire roster played. It's like, it felt like we got the best performance of like 5 girls on the roster, and it felt like South Carolina didn't play well. And it just felt like it was just a tidal wave of just depth and size. And there's just certain things on a basketball court that these teams can do that Indiana just isn't capable of based on the pieces on the roster. And if that's going to change, you need to bring in different pieces. So
yeah, they're able to keep Helani Pow at bay for a good 3 quarters, and then once you got going, it was basically game over. So they came in with the right game plan, executed. There's only so much you can do. Can't keep an All-American like Pow down for long. So love the fight from this program. They continue to always achieve expectations, like overachieve, and continue to do like exactly what we want our men's team to do. So I think that's a good transition to get into DeVries.
Yeah, I agree. There's I don't know if there's a busier man on campus this week than Darian DeVries. The men's portal opened up on Monday. There was a little I do want to say this. There was a little bit of a misconception about our conversation last week, because what I do is I take these long lives and then I'll cut them up into clips and we release them over the week. And I think a lot of people watched our video of assessing Indiana's initial roster and like took it as like we released it on that date, when that was like very much like a live conversation last Tuesday. And so like we had a couple people in the comments be like, these guys have no idea what they're talking about. Like Zarno decommitted 2 days ago, and it's like, no,
I know. No, we
yeah,
only
we
got
know.
5
Yeah.
guys as of it is March 20th. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
timestamp my clips
that's what I
now.
was
I'm
gonna
gonna
say.
have
I
to
was
figure that
thinking of
out.
like throwing the
Yeah.
timestamp on here somewhere,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Look at that. It is March 25th. It's 9:05 p.m. Eastern time. So just to preface this by anything we say. 5 guys pretty much locked in Indiana right now. With obviously news can still happen. Miles Rice, Bryson Tucker, Trent Sisley, Cannon Carlisle, and I'm going to throw in Tucker DeVries as the 5 Indiana guys that we have right now. It's like we are Marshall basically. we're just hitting the trail, and we got 10 spots to fill right now. 10. This team could look so different. So much wiggle room. Honestly, like with the core they have, like it's kind of the young guys that I wanted, like Rice and Tucker. We wanted that. Obviously, we wanted Sicily back. Zerno kind of burned a little bit. Kind of wanted those freshmen to come in. And then there's Bryson Tucker, who's going to be a true sophomore next year. As much as he was unplayable this year, like absolutely unplayable. Don't
You're
mind
ready
that.
to call
No,
those guys
don't mind that coming back.
You're ready to call those guys roster locks?
I'm not calling them roster locks. I'm just saying if they do end up coming back, don't mind it. Like they're young, talented players. Like get DeVries can, put the hammer down a little bit and get them playing defense. They'll be amazing basketball players, all of them. Kyle already is locked in on defense. He just has to figure out his shot just needs to start falling. All of a sudden, he's a all conference level guy. Like period. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah. So going in with those 5, going into you already have one of those 5 is probably an all conference level player in Tucker DeVries. So a lot to build around, a lot to sell on.
I want to make a Tucker DeVries point real quick because
Yeah.
I was definitely sitting here thinking to myself, "Whoa, it's definitely a little weird he hasn't committed yet, right?" I think he's waiting on a medical hardship waiver, and I think once that clears, there's no question he's going to Indiana. Like the Hoosiers Connect and
if he
Darren
has eligibility, which he probably will, he'll be on the roster.
The Darren DeVries Hoosiers Connect interview dropped this morning, and in that interview, DeVries talked about cause he was asked about how he approaches recruiting and like getting kids to leave or getting parents to leave their kids with him. And he's like, well, especially for this year when I'm going to have my son in the locker room with me. So they're expecting him to be there. So I would, if you were like me and you were thinking like, maybe it's a little weird he hasn't committed yet, it's semantics at this point.
Yeah, are we gonna assume Goody's in or not? Because honestly, I'm just putting it as a coin flip at this point, whether Goody's in or not. So he's obviously the wild card. So we could just assume there's 9 to 10 spots. Because they're gonna keep that spot for Goody. They're going to. He's too good of a shooter. He fits perfectly in what DeVries wants to do.
Yeah, there was a Zach Osterman article today. Shout out Zach Osterman. Huge fan of Zach Osterman. Every time he posts something, I'm gonna read it. But he talked about kind of what DeVries' goal for this week was, and he said that he's doing exit interviews with players leaving. So he said he's either he has spoken to or will speak to Trey, Ballo, Leal, and who am I missing? Who else is leaving? Who has no eligibility?
Those are the 3. Those are the rest are walk-ons.
Maybe Goody then.
Goody is the 4th. Goody's the 4th, but he's coming back. Fingers crossed.
And then he's finishing he hasn't met with everyone on the current roster yet. That's the goal for this week is when people start funneling back in from spring break, he's going to have those meetings with the current roster. And it was unclear at the time of writing this article. I think came out around 2 or 3 today, but I'm not entirely sure. It was unclear if he had spoken to Goody yet. But we'd like to assume that if he has eligibility. The other thing is the only thing I've seen on like whether or not the ruling is going to go in Goody's favor is just people praying over it. There's no like he's cooked or he's good. It's just like we'll see. Like who knows? So
I've heard 10% likelihood he comes back. I've heard 80% likelihood he comes back. I've heard every single number from 0 to 100. So I'm just putting it as a coin flip. Either he's in or he's not. 10 games his sophomore year. I don't think there was an injury. I think he just played the last 10 games and Brad Underwood kind of fucked him over by burning his kind of red shirt there, to be honest. He might have a case, he might not. I'm just not sure what's going to happen there. But I mean, whether it's 9 or 10 spots is going to be a completely different roster next year. One thing I'm not doing is including Dallas James, by the way, but I'm just going to assume they're going to bring him back as a walk-on or something like that. Like, I just can't imagine that he uses a scholarship on Dallas James. I just can't. I really hope Dallas James isn't watching. Would hate for him to find out this news through me live on YouTube. Crazy. But yeah, you wanted me to prepare with like some targets.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
so the other thing that DeVries is going to have to do this week, besides meet with his own team and figure out who he's going to try and bring back, and like obviously Malik Renew is in the portal, and he's got interest from a laundry list of schools that includes lots of blue buds and good programs, and Mackenzie Mbako is obviously in the portal, and so he's going to meet with those guys, and you hope he can like bring at least one, if not both of those guys back. But in the event that he doesn't, like I said, the portal opened on Monday. There's been a little bit of smoke on potential guys coming to Indiana. Connor Enright is one that we know is already officially taking a visit, I think April 1st or 2nd. So I wanted you to kind of put together a list of transfer portal targets, kind of guys that are one, available, and two, that you feel like would fit in the DeVries system. But there was another name, two other names I wanted to throw at you too. Ryan Conwell, who was the Indiana State guard from 2 years ago. He transferred to Xavier. We're unsure if he's going to follow Sean Miller to Texas. A lot of Indiana fans want him. And then who's the other one? I'm drawing a complete blank right now.
Enright?
No, I already said Enright. There was another guard, I think, yeah. So transfer targets, available or not available. What do you got for me, Goom?
Yeah, Enright. I mean, isn't he like he's like a smaller 6'2" white boy from DePaul, scrappy.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of people call him Anthony Leal with offense. First of all, I think that's highly disrespectful to Anthony Leal, who was an all defensive level player.
Yeah, I
in the
don't
big
think
in
he
the Big
doesn't look
Ten.
as big as Anthony Leal. Anthony Leal's
But
6'5" and like strong, guys. Like he's not like a small guy. He's not.
But no, people like him. He's scrappy. He was on the Drake team that DeVries coached 2 years ago. He led his team in assists, and he looks to take a bunch of charges. Just a real gritty player. You'd like to think that's
Scrappy.
a bench piece, not a starting guard.
Scrappy, you like to see him getting like 10 minutes a game as a point guard off the bench, in theory. If he even makes the rotation. Because he's like coming from Ivy League, like who's to say he gets tick?
No, DePaul.
DePaul, yeah. It's like worse almost. But anyways, there's one guy specifically that I think's gonna be big. Jonathan Powell. He's gonna be a sophomore next year. He's a freshman this year, out of West Virginia. 6'6" guard. He's in the portal. I think he follows DeVries personally. The 3 West Virginia freshmen that now granted their release, I assume they're going to get texts at the very least this week. The very least. I don't see why you would commit to West Virginia and not entertain the idea of going to Indiana. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think if he calls any of those 4 guys, or any of those 3 guys, they'll come through. So we could really like safely assume that then with Goody back, those 3 freshmen, there's about 6 spots left. Ish. Depending, obviously there might be more turnover and stuff like that. We're not anticipating. Clearly, so then there's Powell. I like Josh Dix from Iowa. Apparently he's really close with Tucker DeVries. He's a really good shooter. Just imagine Dix, Goody, and DeVries in the same lineup. Just picture it. Just, oh my God. With Miles Rice giving him the ball. Doesn't matter who's playing center at that point. It really doesn't. It does not matter who's playing center at that juncture. Doesn't matter. But it really does come down. I'm most intrigued. I know we're gonna get good shooters. We're gonna get good guards. What DeVries does. I'm curious to see what bigs he gets. Is he gonna go? I'm not too familiar with how he plays. Like, I'm looking at all these teams that are still playing. Like Houston, they play 2 bigs. Is Cooper Flag a big? Cooper Flag's kind of playing the big, so Duke's playing like 2 bigs with one of those bigs being Cooper Flag. if that like I don't know.
I don't think you
Like,
can't comp
this
a
is
team with Cooper Flag to another
yeah, no,
college team.
exactly. But I think Houston is fair to kind of like as a model, the longest streak of Sweet 16s active right now. They roll with two very athletic bigs and three very scrappy, strong,
You're saying
disciplined
two
guards.
bigs and all the listeners just turned off the stream.
Well, the problem is that Renew was our second big. He's not like Jawan Roberts and Javier Francis and Tugler at Houston. He's a lot slower. He's not either. They're also 6'8". Like he's bigger than them, but they're stronger and more athletic and just more complete basketball players. Sorry to say it, but like looking for guys like that aren't necessarily can go right or left, can be complete players, maybe not as automatic going left as Renew was, because obviously that was just like he was basically unguardable going left, but like everyone knew he was going left, so it really got him in a pickle sometimes, and it just didn't really fit, especially with a guy like Ballo, because Ballo is also slow. It honestly worked better with like Ware and somehow I don't Renew at the four just doesn't work. Doesn't work. It just doesn't. He doesn't rebound enough. It just doesn't. And it would have been nice to see what DeVries could have done with him, and maybe he could have made him into a rebounder. But it's kind of hard at this point in his career to kind of just wish that upon him, and kind of just wish he becomes that type of player. So I'm just curious to see what bigs he targets, because I think that's going to be something that's very important. A lot of teams that make runs in the tournament have really good bigs. Look at Trey Kaufman-Renn at Purdue. Look at I don't know, Tennessee. They got who's their guy? I mean, they got Florida. Florida has bigs for days. They got like they play two at a time. They go Condon. They go. I watched so much basketball this weekend. Condon. They go Hogg. I love Hogg. Hogg and Condon have really solid games. And then they have Hart and Glogan or whatever his name, and like the other white boy, and there's one other guy. Like they rotate all these guys in. They're all just so solid, so skilled. Like I want to call out Hogg and Condon specifically because they're like 6'10", very tall, not like the craziest athletes, but they're nimble. They can dribble. They have complete games. They can shoot in the outside. Like Renew couldn't really do that. And I look at Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin got knocked out by BYU. But BYU had, tall bigs that can shoot. Wisconsin had tall bigs that can shoot. It's a common theme where, Houston's guys can't necessarily shoot, but they're doing a role, right? So I'm just curious to see what direction he goes and the types of bigs he targets and how he constructs it, because we have zero bigs on the roster right now. So it's going to be completely new in terms of what we're doing at those positions. So it's kind of a good thing for him, because in terms of just like roster construction, he's going to have full control. He's not necessarily stuck with a personnel that he doesn't want to play with. So I'm just curious to see what he does year one. I think with DeVries on the team period, they should have a tournament level roster at the very least. I mean, that's just my expectation going into it. Just having a guy like that can make shots, get Goody back. Like this team should be making the tournament in theory next year. I don't want to like throw expectations on them with 5 guys in the program, four guys in the program right now, and here I am.
Well, it's hard to even.
I was blaspheming all these fans, and here I am throwing expectations on the team with less than a starting 5 on the roster right now. I'm just curious.
And it's still like we need to get. I think we need to get through the end of the week before we start assuming who's on the roster and who's not on the roster. But I think it's fair to have expectations. I don't think Darian DeVries takes the Indiana job if he doesn't think they can win this year, given it's literally Tucker's last year of college basketball. You only get season-ending surgery the time where they did it if you're trying to preserve your eligibility to play it next year. So if you're gonna go under,
I heard
the
he
knife,
didn't have surgery. I heard it was just they looked at his shoulder. He had an operation, and he faked the injury to stay one more year in Indiana. That's what I heard. I heard there was no surgery at all. That's what I heard.
I'm gonna ignore that, and I'm just saying. I think it's fair to have those types of expectations when you look at like if they don't leave West Virginia, they're They were a borderline tournament team this year, and they didn't have DeVries for the last month. Like that was absolutely an NCAA tournament team next year, and he left it to come to Indiana.
Which is
I
why
don't think he
I want him
I
to
don't
target
think
a lot
you
of those West Virginia guys. That'd be
well,
very
yeah,
nice.
it's like I don't think you burn your son's last year of eligibility to take a better opportunity. I think you just like you and I don't know. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I think it's more than fair to have positive expectations for what Indiana basketball could be in 5-6 months without going over the top to the point where you upset yourself with
Yeah.
things that don't happen.
There's a few West Virginia guys that aren't. I mean, McLean and Hawthorne are like big types. Like McLean is like a stretch 4, and Hawthorne is probably like 4 or 5. He might be like a Houston big type, 6'8". Those are the 2 freshman bigs that could be coming in. And then there's Hansberry, who's not in the portal. He's a junior, but he was getting a majority of the attention at the center spot for West Virginia last year. Tamper maybe with I don't know. As much continuity as we can get from the West Virginia team, the more happy I'll be, and the less concerned I'll be going into next year. Obviously, I'm not going to like write them off if it's a hodgepodge of different transfers from different schools, but it would be nice to get a bunch of West Virginia guys. I just think that bode well for instilling culture, getting people on board with DeVries, things like that.
I agree. I wanted to end the basketball conversation, kind of end the show with this. I kind of got on you and Coach Pundit last week in defense of Ben McCollum when you guys started to give him shit about being like the Archie-esque, like blah, blah, blah. And then the reason being for both of you guys saying that by the next time we speak, he's going to be the head coach of Iowa. So we're starting the rivalry early. And here we are, Ben McCollum, head coach of Iowa. I want to. There was one utterly ridiculous story that was attempted to be peddled. That was Ben McCollum was decided he couldn't take the Indiana job because Pam Whitten was too involved, which is the most nothing BS, like
that
fabricated, made up. Like I don't know a thing about
They're
Indiana
just trying to call
athletics.
him
Let me just
misogynistic. Is that all they're trying to do?
no. No. It was like a pro Iowa report being like they think that he thought the president would be too overbearing. It's like if you've paid any attention to Indiana athletics over the last
they wanted to make it look like they got the guy and we
no
missed out on
100%.
the guy. That's all
No,
they're trying to
100%.
do. And
100%.
I think it's fun because I feel like Indiana and Iowa are already like somewhat of a basketball rivalry in some capacity. At least like in terms of my experience, like every time we play Iowa, it's a very highly competitive, explosive, very like at each other's throats type game. Like they knocked us out in the Big Ten semifinal, like St. Patty's Day a couple of years ago, and I was mad. Fucking Jordan Bohannon. I'm like going full as Bobby Knight right now. God. But yeah, no. What did I say in the group chat when they announced the Ben Cullum news officially? What did I say? Do you remember what I said in the group chat? I said DeVries is going to stuff him in a locker. That's what I said. So that's what I'm going to say about the Ben McCullum news being official. Can't wait to see DeVries just dominate him year in and year out. He plays a very interesting, mathematically sound style of basketball, but maybe not sustainable year in and year out. At least maybe in terms of winning the Big Ten, is it going to get the job done? I'm not sure. Is it going to get them in the tournament? Probably. Is it going to make them any more relevant than they were under Fran McCaffrey? Probably not.
No.
Just less scoring, more defense. It's like the same old, same old. Bennett Sturtz will be a problem next year, but once he leaves, like who's to say Ben McCullum has any idea how to evaluate talent at the Big Ten level? Who's to say? He brought all of his D2 guys with him to Drake. Bennett Sturtz turned out to be a very high-level D1 player. Lucky him. And he's bringing him to Iowa. Who's to say he knows how to evaluate talent after year one when Bennett Sturtz leaves? So that was always the biggest concern with McCullum. DeVries has proven it. He's a more sustainable option to go with. And just can't wait to see that matchup.
Well, it's funny the fit too, right? Because if you look at how DeVries, if you're just looking at McCollum and DeVries, like DeVries very much fits Bloomington as opposed to McCollum, who much more fits into like what I was looking for. Like it feels like it's
Iowa
a
was looking for
mismatch
the
between.
opposite of Fran McCaffrey, and that's Ben
Well,
McCollum.
no, but I'm talking about in terms of like, I guess in terms of personalities, like how much you
Yeah,
want to deal with the circus. It's like DeVries was like, I want to come to Bloomington. Like, let's do this. I'm excited to be here. And it felt like Ben McCollum was always hesitant about how much spotlight he wanted. Well, he ended up in Iowa. So
perfect.
it's like, if you're, but on the flip side, if you're Iowa and you're going to take like a Billy Bean-esque Moneyball approach to building out your roster because you're paying wrestlers $5 million, so you're not going to pay the basketball team. Who's the better guy for you to bet on? It's like
Ben
maybe the dude
McCollum.
who just stares at basketball all day.
Probably
So
Ben
it's
McCollum, the guy
definitely
who wants to play 50 possessions a game. That guy. That increases your odds in any matchup.
so I think and just if you look at Drayton, there's the guy who took the Minnesota job was also a Drake coach. So it's like huge for Drake and its ability to produce Big Ten coaches. But I'm very excited to see what this because we now have two measuring sticks of coaches taking new jobs in the Big Ten. Okay, cool. What does our program look like in 6 months compared to their program? What does our program look like in 18 months compared to their program? And then you can start having those conversations of like, did Indiana make the right hire? Because you can make up any type of report you want, but it's not a mistake that Indiana made their move for DeVries and then the rest of the market figured itself out. Like they were the A player here. They made the first choice.
couldn't have said it better myself. They did make the first choice, first pick of the draft. Darian DeVries. I heard it's Darren DeVries, not
It's
Darian.
Darren.
Darren. Okay, that's gonna take some getting used to because it's not spelled like that at all. So, I mean, people are just gonna get that wrong forever. Like people, he
Not if
could
you
win.
win.
Even if he wins, even, you'll be surprised how dumb people are. You'll be surprised. But yeah, we got the first pick. I the more I think about Darren DeVries, the better I feel about it. Honestly, I've kind of plateaued about it where I'm kind of just bought in. Right. I'm just waiting to see what the details look like. Not really looking too into transfer portal rankings. Hard to convince me. Gabe Cups is number 61. Just dude averaged less than 3 points a game. Like there's just no way he's top 100. There's just no
Rafael
shot.
Davis
Love the
tweeted
kid, but there's
something.
just no way.
He tweeted something about Josh Tanja's portal rankings last year. I think he was like in 3-star, like 89 overall, like rated player, and he was an All-American this year. So
Who cares? Yeah, who cares?
doesn't matter.
None of it matters. So just excited more so just to see the details specifically. Very similar to the D line. What are they going to do with the bigs? What's that going to look like? Are we going to go for 7-footers? Or are we going to go for 6'9" athletic guys? Can stretch it out like little. Oh man, if we get little Donnie McClain to come to Indiana, that's going to be my favorite player. Well, he might have to supplant Trey Galloway day one. As my favorite.
Day one, he says. Day one.
Keezer knows I'm just a big Don McClain fan. All-time leading scorer.
Dude, the guy loves Don McClain. It's crazy.
All-time leading scorer at UCLA. His son is a West Virginia commit, asked for out, so he's going to be available. Get him in the cream and crimson. That's honestly my number one. Just a little biased, obviously, but that's like bring that kid in. I promise you, in terms of evaluation, like sometimes you just gotta simplify it and be like, hey, his dad played at a very high level at the college level. Genes tend to translate. The kid's probably going to can contribute at the Big Ten level. It's really as simple as that. He's already a 4-star. He's got all the accolades anyways. It's not like he needs me to hype him up. 6'9", stretch 4. It's the guy that Indiana fans want too. Like
it's exactly what we need.
Yeah, the stretch 4.
A tall guy who can shoot.
Yeah, exactly. We need
really get the people going.
Yeah, you remember getting blown out by Wisconsin, Nolan Winter, and Steven Crowell just came out and knocked down 6 threes in the first 5 minutes. Like, and you're just sitting there like, oh, when's the last time Indiana had anything close to that? what they have going on? Like, man. So yeah, to get someone who's somewhat like that, like he's not 7 foot like Crowell and Winter, but he's 6'9", stretch 4, can contribute. DeVries already had his stamp of approval. Get him over to Bloomington. I want all three of those West Virginia freshmen, honestly, like bad. I think that's probably going to be priority number, maybe not number one for DeVries, but for me, that's like kind of what I want to see is him being able to get all three of those guys. If he's not, I'm going to be a little less excited than I was. Not in a drastic sense, but just like, oh, he wasn't able to get the three guys he was able to commit before. It's a little weird, but that's just a thought. That's the thought I will have. Like,
No, I'm with you. I get it.
nothing crazy, but it's just kind of want to know what would happen. Be the reason for them not to follow him to Indiana.
That's all I had for today, Brad. I did want to get a little selfish here. Last like 2-3 minutes of the show before we wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
The MLB season starts in 2 days.
Okay.
And I just want to put out into the world that I'm excited for the Red Sox. This is literally just for me. Like I'm like pumped for the Red Sox season for the first time since 2019. It feels like they have the chance to do some real damage, and like I just like to be excited to watch baseball again, and like to have a real team that's going to compete and like be in it. And like I get the trade deadline, and I get August baseball, and I get October baseball. Hopefully this year, like I'm a junkie for it. Like I've needed this. So I can't wait for baseball to start. And I'm just, for the fact that the Sox are actually going to be good. Like, yeah, it's a mood enhancement every single day. And like, I'm locked in for 162. Like I'm
excited for you. They got Walker Buehler, who's a really good player from what I hear. Were you able to get Roman Anthony in your fantasy draft?
Oh, see, funny you should say that, Brad, because no, some asshole took him from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Someone drafted Roman Anthony? Oh my God, no way.
Yeah, check out.
I did it. I drafted Roman Anthony ahead of him.
check out the Indiana channel, Indiana at the Voice of College Football Network. Check us out on YouTube. Check out Brad
Shut up my
at
Dodger
Bradley.
talk. You're just gonna no Dodgers for me? Can't shut.
No Dodgers for you. Shout out to Brad at Bradley _ Loomis 8. Shout out to you. Follow me at Alec Keyser. You can follow the Sigs Inside account. We're tweeting about Indiana football all the time at Sigs Inside Pod. Again, I promise I'm doing a lot of shit in personal life, moving and all this stuff. So once I get settled in, I'll be able to sit down and figure out the intro music and the outro music. But shout out to the boys, Wave, Nick Skrill, Signar. The intro song 1621, the outro song is The Sweet Sound of Butter Symphony. They're on streaming platforms now.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for interacting, everyone. I want to see more engagement in the comments moving forward. So love to get it going in episode 3 a little bit with John. Shout out John. So yeah, thanks guys for listening, and peace out. Go Dodgers. Go Hoosiers.
See you guys next week. Go Hoosiers.